Reg, Reg, okay, Reg is in. Okay. All right, good evening. This is Peter Pingatore. I am the chair of the Needham Community Preservation Committee. This is our scheduled meeting, notice with the town clerk's office pursuant to applicable law for Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. This is a meeting that we're holding in a hybrid format. The public may attend in person or on a virtual basis. If you want to attend on a virtual basis, the medium is Zoom, and the Zoom address is located. You can find it on the notice of the agenda that's posted to the clerk's office. As we are normally our course, we'll do a roll call attendance, which allows us to do a tech check to make sure that those who are here in the room can hear those who are tuning in virtually and vice versa. Also want to note that if there are members of the public who are listening in, say this at the beginning of most meetings, this is a meeting, but not a public hearing. We will be having a public hearing on March 15th, where you can attend and express your opinions on these various matters, various applications before the CPC. If you do have a specific question, you can email that question to our staff. And the town is usually pretty good and responsive to specific inquiries, but remember, you can attend on the 15th and ask questions live, virtually or live. Okay, so let's start with our tech check. Joe Barnes.
Here.
Actually, we may want to say we have a guest. His name is Stuart Saganor. Some of you have met him before. Some of you have heard of him. So why don't we just, when you state your name, if you could say your appointing authority. If you don't remember, I can prompt you. So let's start with Joe Barnes, and just so everybody gets a flavor of. And so, okay, is that okay? So, Joe.
I'm still here, and I was appointed by the select board.
Okay, Bob Dermody.
Good evening, Stuart. Bob Dermody, appointed by the select board.
Laura Dorfman.
You muted.
Sorry, hi, Stuart. I was appointed by the Historical Commission.
And Reg Foster.
I'm here, and I'm appointed by the Needham Housing Authority.
I guess Dina Hannigan, is she present?
No, I don't.
Okay, Dina's absent. Okay. Dave Herrer.
Here, I was appointed by the Conservation Commission.
Jean McKnight.
Jean McKnight here, Planning Board.
Rick Zimbo.
Rick Zimbone is here. I was appointed by the moderator.
Okay, and I am the chair, as I said. Peter Pingatore, appointed by the moderator. Chairman's updates presently do not have any. And so let's start with our presentation by Stuart Saganor from the Community Preservation Coalition. Stuart comes in every couple of years to give us kind of a tutorial and a primer on the intricacies of the Community Preservation Act and to answer the questions. And so Stuart is, I put a little bit of time constraints on him, but because of how much we have on our agenda, he normally would graciously appear here in person, but he's here virtually in the interest of time, and he's got a presentation. We'll let Stuart take it from there. Is that an okay introduction, Stuart?
Absolutely. So let me see if I can share my screen and then start the show.
All right, one last point for everyone.
But test your screen, so if there's any issues, I can. Perfect.
Okay, Cecilia Sinchak is going to be leaving the room, going across the hall for her presentation to the Finance Committee on behalf of Department of
Public Works.
Public Works. Okay, hopefully she'll be back, and we will be able to handle this without her. Okay.
If you have any issues, that someone either text me or just come knock on the door and I'll hop back
Okay.
over.
All right, good. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Cecilia. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me, folks. I usually say love coming to Needham, but I love being remotely in Needham, because you folks go down in CPA lore as having still to this day the largest ever CPA project in the history of the Community Preservation Act. That's about 15,000 projects, and none of them have been bigger than your Needham Town Hall, top to bottom rehab, which I'm guessing you're probably still paying for. Is that probably right?
We're going to be yes, and we're winding it down by 2026.
I'm impressed with that stat right at the top of your head, Peter.
Well, I just sounded like I knew it. You know, you never know. It could be an almost game with me sometimes. Okay.
Well, so I've been through that building a couple times before, during, and after construction, and it's just truly a spectacular project. So I show that picture all the time, and I also give the link that you folks still have on your website somewhere with every document related to that project. I have never seen a municipal construction project that had better documentation and photo documentation of an entire project. I use that all the time for other communities. So kudos to you folks in Needham for a particularly fantastic project. So the one thing I'll say about tonight's presentation, if it's okay with Peter, we're going to do this a little bit of an express version, but I'd still like to take questions along the way, if that's all right, because I think if we wait till the end, you might not remember exactly what you wanted to ask. So I'm happy to do that. Peter, I'll rely on you maybe to keep an eye on the audience there if someone raises their hand and let me know that someone has a question, and I'll pause a couple times too. For those of you that aren't familiar with our organization, we're a nonprofit based in Boston, but we're really just a combobulation of all these other nonprofits in the categories that CPA represents. We have 21 members on our steering committee, including 8 from CPA communities, and there is a member from Needham. Cheryl Gossman is actually on our steering committee, one of the 21, one of the newest members of the steering committee, actually. And the things we do, I think, are typical of, for lack of a better word, a municipal trade association. Technical assistance, certainly. I'm going to show you our website in a second. There's a particular page I want to point out to you there. Hopefully you're all getting our newsletter, and if not, let us know. We'll get you on the list. Another one's coming out in the next couple of days. Probably, I think our best service that we provide to you is representing you on Beacon Hill regarding CPA matters, and particularly the trust fund, and every year going up there and going through that 6-month process to get trust fund surplus dollars, which we'll talk about in a second. We are involved with communities that are trying to adopt CPA. There are actually 3 this spring on the ballot. Danvers, Shirley, and Winchendon is about to go on the ballot. And then, of course, trainings and workshops like this one. We support ourselves primarily by dues from member communities. So we really appreciate you folks voting back in October to join the coalition. Hopefully, Peter Celia's got that check on the way. We haven't received it yet, but hopefully it'll be in the mail, as they say.
I apologize, but I will confirm.
No problem. And it may be sitting in the office. We don't go to the office every day to pick up mail like we used to before the pandemic. We're in there only a couple times a week now. So our website hopefully is familiar to some of you. I want to point out there is a page called CPA Technical Assistance, which is right here. I don't know if you can see my pointer on the screen, but that is a page that is specifically for you. It opens up a big menu with literally hundreds of articles on CPA, the finer points of CPA. They're organized by category. It's a really helpful page for you folks. If you have any questions on CPA or want to see what other communities have done, it's a great resource, and it's primarily for Community Preservation Committee members like yourselves. So I'd encourage you to spend some time there. Before we talk about some of the finer best practices and points of CPA, I wanted to give you kind of the 30,000-foot level view of the program. It's unbelievable the popularity CPA still has to this day. We are up to 194 cities and towns. You'd think that everyone who wanted to adopt it by now would have. We just had 5 communities pass it in November. 6 were on the ballot, 5 of the 6 passed. So, over half of the municipalities in Massachusetts have the program, but the real impressive statistic is that 70% of the state lives in a CPA community, because we've had a influx of the cities, and particularly the blue-collar urban gateway cities that have really embraced the program over the past decade, which is terrific to see because you want CPA to work for everybody across the state. And that has really rocketed up the numbers of people that live in CPA communities. And we're all very proud of this last statistics there that no community has ever revoked CPA. I don't know if I'll be able to keep that line on the slide forever. I sure hope so. It's actually only been on the ballot 3 times to revoke it in 20 years. I think it was Northampton, Sturbridge, and Hingham, I think were the 3, and it was soundly defeated in all 3. So this is definitely my favorite map in Massachusetts, the one that shows all the CPA communities. The towns are in green, and those cities I mentioned are in orange. Those 5 communities that passed CPA have the little stars on there that just passed in November. I'm going to have to talk to Chase, who makes this map. He always puts the stars right on top of the name of the town, so I have to do it from memory. Let's see. Shelburne, Worcester, Boylston, Natick, and Westboro were the towns that passed CPA in the fall. It was defeated in Burlington. And those 2 that are on the ballot now, as I mentioned, Danvers and Shirley, and Winchendon is going to join them in the next couple of days, probably at their town meeting. All right, so there's the high-level picture of what's happening with CPA. And Peter asked me tonight to just delve into some of the basics as a way of bringing maybe newer members along, a little refresher for the existing people who've been on the committee for a while, and maybe a few things that were missed along the way. And, you know, the CPC has a lot of responsibilities, but these are the basic 5 things that a CPC does. I heard Peter mention your public hearing coming up this year. On March 15th, you're required to do that by the law every year. Folks sometimes make the mistake of thinking that the hearing has to be to present the projects for that year. That's actually not the case. You can do it that way if you want to, but the hearing is designed to happen at the beginning of your process to give the public a chance for them to tell you what they think your priorities should be for the coming year and what projects to look into. So many communities do 2 public hearings, one at the beginning of the process and then another one before town meeting to introduce their projects. Some combine it into one. It's totally up to you folks. But if you are using it to present your projects, you also want to give people an opportunity to give some overall comments as to things they want you to study, whether it be, we think we need more senior housing, or we want pickleball courts. Can you look into that next year? So those input is what the law talks about, because you use that hearing to update your community preservation plan. And hopefully you have a community preservation plan. I do find that some of the communities that adopted CPA a long time ago, and what I call the wild west days of CPA, where there wasn't much guidance and help on interpreting the act, some of them missed this step of writing a community preservation plan. Hopefully you do have one. Do you have a CPA plan?
Yes, we do. I have a
Excellent.
question about that when you're done with the slide. If you're
Okay.
taking questions as we
Great.
go along.
Then really the money things with CPA. Hopefully you're getting monthly or quarterly reports from the finance department on what you have in your balances. And you keep an eye on that. Every year you prepare a budget for town meeting. And then of course you make project recommendations to town meetings. So those are the basic functions of a CPA committee. Yes, Peter, you had a question.
So I think in terms of compliance, I would say that we're pretty good. One thing that we've struggled with is routinely updating the CPA plan. It usually happens maybe every 6 or 7 years. We're about to institute a new, we just finished our work actually of amending the plan. So I'm trying to figure out a way, and maybe we can talk about this offline, but a way of, I like the idea of having 2 hearings, taking community input at the beginning of the process, and then a hearing regarding all of our applications and our financials, et cetera, at the end of the process. But is there an expectation that the community preservation plan itself should be amended as a result of the hearing? Or have you
Yes.
seen instances where there's like an addendum that says what we got from input for that year?
So believe it or not, the law actually doesn't say annually. But the Department of Revenue guidelines do say annually. And I think the legislature clearly intended it to be annually because, CPA is in a community for, some years, some communities, 23 years now. Obviously, they didn't intend you just write a plan and put it up on the shelf and not revisit it. So, one way to do it, Peter, is to do, a major top to bottom rewrite every 5 years, like you guys do, 5 or 6 years, and then just do a light update, every year. There's no details on, how deep and involved these plans have to be. Some communities hire consultants and they pay a lot of money and they have visioning sessions with the whole town. And the plan is 80 pages with charts and graphs and pictures and all that. And others, divvy up one section to each of the 9 people on the committee and they write it themselves, and it's a Word document and it's 8 pages long. So it's completely up to you folks. But if someone should be looking at it every year and doing a light update. It might be just changing if anyone's left the committee and there's a list of committee members on there and the next year's application goes in the back and the list of projects you add on last year's projects. Maybe that's all it is in terms of an update. But it is something you want to do annually.
Okay, you've given us enough guidance. Thank you.
All
Stuart,
right. Yes.
it's Laura. Sorry, I just went back to the last slide.
Yes.
You talked about getting public input on and interest on the project. So our timeline, I'm not sure works for that because we take applications up to December. Public's not involved in that. We consider them and really they're not, unless I'm misstating something, they're not really presented to the public until March or April. And then we have town meeting. So you're suggesting that the projects be presented as soon as they come in the fall?
No. Well, the first thing I'm saying is there's no requirement to present your projects at all. That is, if you choose to do that, that would be a local thing that you guys like to do. And we have a lot of communities that do that, not all. So that's completely up to you. But I think the communities that do present their projects, it's right before town meeting, after the CPC has voted to recommend them. A couple do it just prior to the recommendation vote to get feedback from the community, and then they vote after that. I've seen it both ways. I've seen, communities have already decided their projects, and this is just an information session for people to ask questions before town meeting, because town meeting time is limited. And people might not, do you have a representative town meeting?
Yes.
We do. And
Yeah.
so we actually do have our public hearing prior to us voting. We take it and we have our meeting before the select board and our finance committee meeting all before we vote on recommendations.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. It's absolutely a great way to do it. Did that help, Laura? Probably went back on mute.
Yes, thank you.
All right, good enough. All right, so let's delve into the money a little bit because folks are always interested to hear, particularly about the status of the trust fund and what's going on there. Of course, CPA has 2 main revenue sources. Your local property tax surcharge revenue. You have a 2% surcharge, and we call that your local surcharge revenue. And the second major source is obviously the trust fund distribution, which comes out in November every year. You also earn interest on the money that's sitting in the town's accounts that has not been spent yet by the CPC. Usually the fund is not its separate own bank account. It's usually commingled with all the town's cash, but the town is responsible for tracking how much of that interest that they earn, if they earn any, is attributable to CPA, and they're supposed to pay that to you every summer when they close the books. So you want to make sure that you are seeing that. We've had communities who the accounting department didn't realize that was supposed to have happened, and the CPC didn't catch it. And poor Rockport, lost out on 5 years worth of interest, unfortunately, before they did catch it. And we've had other communities have that as well. So the place where you can see if they've done it is on the form called the CP2. That's the main document that your town officials need to file with DOR every summer when they close the books. It's the profit and loss statement on your CPA program. It shows your year-end balances. It shows what you spent. It shows what you spent in administrative, how much money you took in, how much interest you earned. It's a 2-page document. They should give you a copy. If they don't, I would definitely ask to see it. It's a really valuable piece of paper to help you guys in tracking your money. It's again called the CP2, and that's where you can see if the interest is on there. All right, so let's dig into the trust fund a little bit, which is everyone's number one question usually. The trust fund only has one statutory funding source, and that's in green on the left, and that's revenue collected at the state's Registry of Deeds. So anytime someone steps to the window to record a document at any registry in Massachusetts, they pay a fee to the state. Most of the fee goes to the general fund. Let's say the fee on mortgages, I think, is $125, and on deeds, it's $175. Of those fees, $50 goes to the CPA trust fund right off the top. There's one document that's $25, municipal lien certificates. And that is an amazing funding source. It is not subject to appropriation by the legislature. It's a true trust fund. The money goes right from the window at the registry to an account at the Department of Revenue called the CPA Trust Fund. And the only thing that can happen with that money is it's automatically paid out as a match to you folks every November 15th. So, I think every constituency in the state would love to have an off-budget, dedicated funding source that brought in north of $50 million a year. It's really terrific that we are blessed with that funding source. And one of the reasons why CPA has become so popular as well is that dedicated funding source. But, as more communities came into CPA over the years and as the real estate market took a tumble, right now it's a really low volume at the real estate Registry of Deeds. So the trust fund is not having great revenue right now. So about 9 years ago, we started asking the legislature to supplement the trust fund, really as a stopgap measure because they weren't willing to raise that deeds recording fee. And 7 out of the last 9 years, or I think it might be 8 out of 10 now, we have received money from the state budget surplus. It's over $100 million at this point, which goes right into the trust fund and then is paid out to you folks. The past couple of years, that surplus money has come in late. So you've actually gotten 2 checks. This year, you got one in November from the green amount and one on the right-hand side, which we'll see in a second, for your surplus spending money. But that's something we have to go up and advocate for every year. It's not automatic. It's not in the law. And it's something we have to work really hard. And occasionally we ask you guys to call your legislator. And you're probably going to hear from us next month to ask them as the House does its budget. And we try to get that tucked into the House budget. This fee here used to be $20 for CPA documents, $10 for municipal lien certificates. That was the original legislation in 2000 was $20 and $10. And we didn't get that changed until 2019. We worked on it for 12 years before we finally were able to get the legislature to raise that fee. We had already lost about $8 of the $20 just to inflation by 2019. So the trust fund was just about to fall into the single digits as a match for 2019 when we finally got that fee raised. So this year's results for the trust fund, as you probably know, the money in November that came from the Registry of Deeds filing was a 30% match. And then we were able to get 20 million from the trust fund for the trust fund from the budget surplus. That is the highest match ever, actually. And so the final base match was about 38% for all CPA communities. So what was your share? From the Registry of Deeds, you received $890,000 from that revenue. And then that surplus check was almost $250,000 for you folks. So that's one of the higher, you folks have one of the higher local surcharges in the whole state. You're probably in the top 10. And because of that 2% surcharge and relatively high property values in Needham. So that's a substantial amount of money that we were able to get for the trust fund that will fund some projects. So a final take from the trust fund for Needham of $1.1 million, which was 38% of what you collected locally.
Stuart, we got a question from Jean McKnight.
Okay.
Yes, I don't understand the use of the word match.
Okay. Match is probably a bad word, Gene, because match implies 100%. And the CPA trust fund did match 100% for the first 6 years because there were small communities in the program, and there was plenty of money to match everyone 100%. But it's
Match-
basically
Match what?
Okay, so
It's a-
there's did you explain, I can't recall, Stuart, did you talk about the two revenue sources for the local fund? That's, that we get property surcharges plus a match, air quotes, from the trust, the CPA trust. That's
Right.
I don't know if you said, I can't recall, but I was fact checking something else. So I don't know if you explained that in your presentation.
Yes, I did, but I didn't answer Gene's question directly. So let me do that. So Gene, the money that comes from the state trust fund is calculated as a percentage of what each community raises locally. So you saw that base match last year was 38.5%. So there are 3 rounds of the trust fund. On round 1, everyone got the same thing, 38.5% of what they raised locally. So Boston raised $23 million locally. They got a check for 38% of that. You folks got 38% too, but it was of your local surcharge, which is 2 point something million, I forget. So it's a percentage of what you collected in your local money the year before, and the state matches it the next year.
Good, thank you.
That's some
clear, yeah.
percentage. Yeah, good question. I'm doing a little bit of the express version here because I see I'm in the last 10 minutes of my allocated time. So I didn't explain that as detailed as I normally do. And I wanted to leave, a decent amount of time to look at this too, because this is the main thing that I'd say 70% of our calls on the technical assistance hotline are what we call allowable uses calls. We got an application to do this. Can we do that? And it's an art, not a science, because CPA is a very flexible law. The Department of Revenue never wrote detailed regulations on CPA. So it really has become, a law that can do a lot of different things. But the main factor is you have to be able to find a box on this chart that justifies the project. And let's sort of step through how we use this allowable uses chart. By the way, this is a simplified version. On the website, we have the official DOR version of the allowable uses chart. It only differs in that it has definitions for all these words, because all the words on the left and the top have definitions in the act. The DOR version is a little more detailed on that. So we all know the 4 categories of CPA, right? That's easy: open space, historic, recreation, and housing. But CPA cannot pay for every single expense in those categories. Far from it. It can only pay for projects that are described by one of those verbs on the left-hand side. You have to be acquiring some type of asset, creating some type of asset, preserving it, supporting it in the housing category only, and in some categories, rehabilitating that asset. So if you can't find a box on this chart that says yes, that justifies your project, it is not eligible for funding. And really, to do that, you really need a budget, a pretty detailed budget, not an exact budget, because usually by the time projects come to you in an application, they haven't been put out for bid yet. But you need a pretty detailed budget, and you really need, if you want to do it right, to go line item by line item through that budget and say, okay, yep, that's preservation of a recreational field. We can do that. That's the box that justifies that expense. Oh, we're going to buy land and then build the park. Well, that's acquire land for recreation. Yep, we can do that. And then we can build the park. We can create the park with that box. So you have to find a box that says yes for every expense in a project budget. Sometimes you get applications and half of it is fundable, but the other half isn't because it doesn't appear on the chart. So let me give you a quick example of how you would use this. Let's say you got an application from the CONSCOM to buy a piece of open space. So open space, by the way, is conservation land. Recreation is active recreation: parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, community gardens, trails. That's the difference between those two. A lot of times people get those confused. But open space in this example on the chart means conservation land stuff, and recreation is parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields. And CPA has to be outdoor recreational facilities only. It can't pay for any recreational buildings. All right, so the CONSCOM wants to buy a piece of conservation land. Not that there's much conservation land left to buy in Needham probably, but that's what they want to do. They've negotiated a price of $500,000 with the seller, and they submitted an application. Well, that's an easy one. That's an acquisition of conservation land, an acquisition of open space. And there's a big yes in that column. As a matter of fact, that's where 90% of the activity is in the open space column, is to acquire open space land. But sometimes it's not as easy as that. So let's say you get an application to do an oral history of World War II veterans in Needham. The Historic Society or the Historic Commission comes to you and says there are only 21 World War II veterans left. We want to capture their stories on a professional videotape and transcribe it and publish a brochure and put it in the library and send copies to, every veteran in town. And we want to capture their stories. And so we need $20,000 to hire a professional video company to produce it and to distribute it. All right, so you have a budget for that project that shows what they're going to spend it on. It's clearly in the historic category. Are you acquiring a historic resource with that project? And the definition, like I said, all these words have definitions. The definition of a historic resource is a building, structure, vessel, meaning a boat, real property, document, or artifact. Has to be one of those 6 things in the historic category. Those are the only things you can spend money on, according to the definitions in section 2. So are you acquiring a historic resource? Are you acquiring a building, structure, vessel, real property, document, artifact when you do an oral history project? You are not. Are you preserving one of those? The definition of preserve is protecting an asset from injury, harm, or destruction. Nope. And of course, you're not rehabilitating a historic resource too. That project is absolutely not eligible for funding with CPA. In fact, the box that probably describes that project best is the 2 that say no in it. You're creating something new, which is a videotape, and the legislature got that right. You can't create anything new in the historic category. I always applaud them for getting that one right. It might be also considered support. It definitely has to do with the historic category and supports that category, but support is only allowed in the housing category. So any questions on the allowable uses chart or some examples that you want to step through from this year's batch of applications? We can do that.
Sure, we have a couple of questions. One first by Dave Harrer, and then a follow-up and then Gene McKnight. So Dave first.
Yeah, my question is there an enforcement mechanism for this? Like if a town approves a project that isn't in one of these yes categories? And is there ever any clawback of money? I'm not sure how that whole thing works.
Right. So it's the same with CPA as any other municipal appropriation. The enforcement of spending is by the citizens of Needham. And they can file a 10 taxpayer lawsuit after town meeting if they don't feel an appropriation was proper. And we have had, plenty of CPA lawsuits. Anytime you get 15,000 of anything, and we've had 15,000 projects, you're going to get some that probably weren't great. Norwell got sued over spending money on sidewalks, and they lost that suit because a sidewalk is not land for recreational use. It's in the transportation corridor. It's a transportation asset. Wayland got sued, and Concord got sued, and Oak Bluffs got sued for no, not Oak Bluffs, sorry, Tisbury for artificial turf fields. Oak Bluffs was sued over a grant to a church, as was Acton. The most famous lawsuit on CPA is the Acton Historic Preservation lawsuit when they gave money to a church. And that one is the only lawsuit that has gone all the way to the SJC, the Supreme Judicial Court. It was kind of cool to see the Supreme Court Judicial Court justices talking about CPA for an hour when they decided that case. North Andover was sued on turf fields as well. So that's the same for any municipal appropriation, Dave. After town meeting, anything that was approved in that budget is fair game for citizens who are upset about it.
I had a follow-up question, but I'm going to let Jean has a question for you.
Yes, this is something I've been confused about when it comes to access to open space. I think there's some words like that that suggest a project that enhances access to open space is an approved use, although you can correct me on that, of course. But you mentioned, and this is what confuses me, trails are considered recreation. And well, what's the difference? Well, the difference to me is you have a special budget that has to be set aside for open space where you don't for recreation. So I'm confused about why you can't use the special money set aside for open space to create or enhance trails through your open space.
Okay, that is a great question, but it's a two-part question. The first is the last part. The open space reserve account used to be only for conservation land. The legislature changed that in 2012. And it was a huge bill. It had about 20 changes to CPA. It was the bill that got us our first pot of surplus money. It was a 17-page bill. We have a complete write-up on it, a red line on it, hundreds of news articles on that bill. It was major. It had a lot of major changes to CPA. And one of the changes was they opened up the open space reserve account to recreation. So now you can use that reserve account for not only conservation land projects, but for parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, and community gardens. So that might have been a misconception that you folks have been operating with, but you absolutely can pay for your recreation projects out of that reserve account. Now,
I'm probably the only one who was confused about that. We do combine them. Okay.
But Jean, your question about trails is fantastic because it definitely is in the definition of land for recreational use. Section 12 says parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, community gardens, non-commercial youth and adult sports, trails. But where are trails? They're almost always on conservation land, right? So
Yes.
it is a little bit of a problem with CPA. It's not the only problem. There are definite problems in this law, and we fixed a lot of them in 2012, and we plan to file another comprehensive bill to fix these little niggling issues in 2025 in the next legislative session, and that will be one of them, Jean, because it's confusing. But if you do a trail project, the width of the trail is land for recreational use. The woods on either side is conservation land. It doesn't really matter. You can pay for it out of the same reserve account. But that is a quirk in the law that needs to be fixed.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so Bob Dermody has a question, and then I have a follow-up question.
Stuart, and you may have just mentioned this when you spoke about turf fields. Fields are allowed, but specifically artificial or not, but why is that not considered creating recreational space? What is it about turf that's not allowed?
Yeah, it was up until 2012. So before 2012, CPA said nothing about the composition of fields. It could have been turf, artificial turf. It could have been dirt fields. It could have been grass. It didn't matter. But when the proposal was made, also up until 2012, you couldn't use CPA money to fix up your existing recreational assets. You see that box down the bottom that says rehab recreation? It says a big yes.
Yeah.
You see that? Before 2012, it said the same thing in that column as it says in open space and housing. You could not rehab your existing parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields unless you had acquired or created them with CPA funds.
Okay.
That was one of the changes in 2012. That was the biggest change. It opened up that category so you could start fixing up your currently owned parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields. When that happened, there's an entire lobby out there that hates artificial turf. And artificial turf is one of those hot button controversial issues. You line up 50 Harvard educated lawyers and they'll tell you artificial turf is the worst thing ever. And then you line up 50 Yale lawyers and they'll tell you it saves the environment. It doesn't have, you don't have to water it. You don't have to fertilize it. It's the greatest thing ever. So it's just one of those hot buttons. And it's a hot button in Newton, which has an anti-turf group. And they looked at this change in CPA, even though it said nothing about turf. And they said, well, if we let communities fix up their existing parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields, they're going to turn them all into artificial turf. And every grass field in a CPA community is going to be made out of turf. And so they opposed it at the legislature. And they actually slowed down that bill by over a year. And there was a compromise that had to be struck. This is what they call, when they talk about the sausage being made, when legislation is, the deals are made in the back room. Anyone went to Hamilton, in the room or whatever that song was, they wanted to be in the room where it happens. The sausage is made behind the scenes at the legislature. And for a year, there was a negotiation between the anti-turf folks, the pro-turf folks, our organization, and the legislators to come to some agreement to allow the bill to move forward. And the agreement was that the turf field itself would be excluded from CPA funding. All the other elements of the project, if it was a big recreational facility, could use CPA funds. And you could buy the land if you were building something new with CPA funds. But when it came to the actual turf surface, you could not use, after 2012, you cannot use CPA funds for that.
Thank you. Fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Believe me. And you didn't want to be in that room because it was an awful year, frankly. It really was. The legislature does not like controversy. As soon as controversies arise, the bill's on hold and you got to work it out. You have no choice but to work it out if you want your bill to move forward.
Follow up on the
Can I
playground
ask a
space.
question?
We have hands up. First, we'll go with Dina. Sorry, I didn't see your hand, Dina.
That's okay. Hi, this is Dean. I'm with Park and Rec. So I think you answered my question while I had my hand up. So what you're saying is if you have a field, so for instance, in Needham at DeFazio, so the turf itself, you cannot use the CPA funds, but everything around that's not a turf surface, you can.
Absolutely. And is that already a turf surface, Dina?
Well, it's a huge area. There are 2 artificial turfs, yes, but
Yes,
the rest
okay.
are not.
So when those artificial turf ones need to be redone, because they get to be redone, every 10, 12 years or so,
Yeah,
you could not use CPA funds for that.
right,
If
okay.
you wanted to turn one of the grass fields that's still there into turf, you could not use CPA for that. But
Okay.
anything else, the lighting, the planting, the benches, the equipment shed, the grass fields, the backstops, every other part of that complex is okay for CPA.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you very much.
No
And
problem.
If you
Very well.
wanted to turn the turf field back to a grass field, that would be covered. Yes.
Now, I would like to know about that if you do that, because that would be a first. I've never heard of that happening, and I'd love to have that example in my little toolkit.
All right,
I don't
Rick Zambone.
see that happening, but thank you.
Rick Zambone, your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. Stuart, thank you very much. This has been very helpful and informative, and I was there for the last time you were here, and I continue to learn something new every time you come in. This question is really related to trails and surfaces for trails. As we develop trails and you create access for people with handicaps or disabilities, are there any restrictions on the material that can be used to build a trail that would be able to accommodate someone with a handicap?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, that is a real hot area of CPA now, is making what they call accessible trails. There's a whole, actually, a trade association, the Massachusetts Accessible Trails Association, that is trying to get more regulations requiring communities to build, when they build trails, to build them and make them accessible So paved trails are fine. A hard pack, stone dust, that's usually what's used in if it's in an more environmentally sensitive area, those are fine. Wood chips aren't really great. I don't really know too much about accessible trails, but you're right. There are particular surfaces that are better than others. Wouldn't matter. Anything you wanted to do to make that trail accessible, if rehabbing an existing trail or building a new one, absolutely fine.
So it's really not CPA funding, it's what's allowable vis-a-vis the Conservation Commission.
Absolutely. Yeah. CPA is not going to help you with your ConsCom permit for that project.
Correct. Okay, I understand now. Yep.
They would have to go along with whatever you had planned, obviously.
Yep.
But whatever you had planned that they can go along with, CPA could pay for it.
Understood. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, Dave Harris got his hand up, and then Joe Barnes.
Now that we're on the subject of surfaces, one more question. If one is building a playground, is it allowable to put like artificial materials?
You guys ask great questions. You ask great questions. All right.
Under the swings and whatever.
Yes, we get that question a lot because wood chips are an old-fashioned playground. They don't do wood chips anymore. You really shouldn't do wood chips. They break down a lot. They're not safe. They're not handicapped accessible. And so everyone is converting their playgrounds from wood chips to either what they call a poured-in-place surface or clay or something, or artificial turf. And that came up immediately after 2012. It was in my town, actually, and they wanted to use artificial turf just under a playground. And the wording in the law, Peter will love this because he's a lawyer. The wording says it prohibits artificial turf for athletic fields. It actually says that in the law. And so we, talked to our steering committee, which has lawyers on it. And our opinion was that no problem putting the turf under playgrounds because they're not athletic fields. And it specifically says athletic fields. So I think you're good to go. And we have two of them in my town, both paid for by CPA with that great, the turf and then the rubberized padding underneath it that really makes, it's a great playground surface. It's the best.
So poured in place, sorry to interrupt because I'll forget this question. Poured in place is okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
that
not
rubberized.
considered-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you.
Joe Barnes, you have your hand up.
Yes,
Question.
just quickly, thank you, Stuart. Great information for some of the new folks and also for some of the more veteran. But the chart I found exceptionally helpful. I think as a committee, we understand most of this. Having it in one location here, as you've put on this chart, becomes very helpful. And it's something I think we probably will download and have by our side as we go through some of these projects coming our way. So thank you for the great presentation.
No problem. I actually went into a CPC meeting in person once, which I usually do like to come in person. I'm going to Phillipston tomorrow night. We have 5 CPA towns around there that are all coming to Phillipston High School for a presentation similar to this. But I walked into a CPA committee once and they had taken this chart and put it on a big piece of foam core. And every meeting they tucked it out from behind the file cabinet and put it up on the wall for their CPC meeting so they could use it if they needed it. It's not a panacea. Allowable uses is really complicated. Like I said, it's more of an art than a science. This chart will help, but it doesn't answer all the questions that come up.
Thank you.
Okay, just my follow-up question is, so it sounds there are various lawsuits by citizens challenging CPA grants. Were those all trial court cases? I assume they were. And do you have those on your database? And can we access them through the CPC, the coalition database?
Right. We have tons of information on the Newton lawsuit, which started it all in 2007. That's in all the information about the 2012 bill. We have tons of information on the Acton lawsuit. Those are the two that went deepest into the court system. The Acton lawsuit went all the way to the SJC. Newton lost the first round in Superior Court on the park playground they wanted to fix up before it was allowed. And they appealed. I begged the mayor not to appeal because the further up it goes, the more impact it has on all the communities in the state. Whereas in Superior Court, it only applied to the that particular town. But they did appeal and they lost, but it didn't get to the SJC. But then we went ahead and advocated to change the law because all the CPA communities wanted to do what Newton wanted to do too. Beyond that, no. Some of them are very old. I don't have much information on them. Well, we have some information. It's not on the website. We do have some information on Concord's lawsuit. I could get that if you wanted that information. I don't have anything on Oak Bluffs. Was also a same thing as Acton, a religious institution, but it didn't go very far. I think the church withdrew its application once the lawsuit was filed.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, thank you. Question from Reg Foster.
Hi, Needham Housing Authority, Stuart. Support for housing, that box, that one in the yes in the matrix. Can you expand a little bit on what that means and what it doesn't mean?
Absolutely. So this was one of the things that we worked on with the 2012 legislation. I said that most of these words on the side and top of the chart have definitions. They're all in section 2 of the law. I'd love for you all to read the entire CPA law. Don't do it late at night. You might fall asleep. But if you can't read the whole thing, read section 2. Every law has definitions at the front of the law. And section 2 is really where the rubber meets the road in CPA. You learn almost everything you need to know about the law from section 2. And there's 2 words that did not have definitions for some strange reason when the law was put out. Create, which still doesn't have a definition, but it really doesn't need one. But support was not defined. And so it was a little bit of the Wild West of what it meant to support an affordable housing project. And some communities, Reg, wanted to do rental assistance programs. And they did them, but then one town council said, no, I don't see that as support of affordable housing. You can't do it. And that was upsetting to all the housing advocates and to us because it had been a great part of CPA to do rental assistance programs. So when we were working on that 2012 legislation, we carefully wrote a definition of support, working with the legislature that was broad. It didn't take away all the different things communities had done with support, but it clarified what the main purpose of it was, which is to provide grants directly to individuals who qualify for housing as opposed to actually building the housing. So rental assistance, down payment assistance, first-time home buyer assistance, those sort of things. But it does say, shall include but not be limited to, that famous legal saying to give yourself some room there. So typically, pretty much every expense that you can think of, if it's working toward building an affordable housing unit, could be considered support. So, a land survey to see if the housing parcel could fit a house on it, or a habitat house, and you need to do a survey of that, or some engineering studies of that parcel. Communities have used it for housing production plans, to write a housing production plan for the town. Some communities use a support verb to hire a part-time housing coordinator, work on building housing with CPA funds. It's pretty broad. It can't pay for any ongoing, operating expenses or maintenance, because those things are never allowed with CPA. But if it's working toward building a new affordable housing unit or one of the housing programs like rental assistance, almost all the expenses for that would be eligible.
I do a follow-up.
Yeah.
So there's a plethora of different ways that support has been used to pay for staff to do things that advances affordable housing. There are a ton of examples in the database. So can you use under the premise of support, can support be provided to rehabilitating and restoring affordable housing that was not built with CPA funds originally?
No. Great question. Really great question again. So we have something that it's kind of a slang around the office that we call verb shopping. And it's what people want to do sometimes when they use this chart. The idea of using this chart is find the box that truly best describes the project, and then you live with what it says in that box. So if you want to, start working on planning some rehabilitation of your housing authority units, for example, and you go, that's rehabilitation of housing, but you don't like the no that's in that box because you didn't build them or create them with CPA funds. So then you go shopping for another verb. Let me find a verb that works here. And you end up on support, and you're like, well, I can't justify it under rehabilitate, but I could justify it under support. And I'm not a lawyer, but I learned this concept from Kathleen Colery, who was the chief lawyer at DOR for the municipal finance unit, who retired. But she said, and Peter, you're going to have to fill me in on this, fill in the blanks. But basically what she said is, the basis of statutory construction is that the legislature would never specifically have prohibited something like that if they intended you to go around it by using another verb. So she explained it much more artfully than I did, being a non-lawyer. So no, you can't use support to get around the fact that it says no in the rehabilitation box.
Yeah, can I do one more follow-on question?
Yes, Reg, you
Yeah.
can.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, it's hard to,
That's okay.
I was looking at you to ask you here. But you're not, and I was actually looking at that little square up there, that was you.
I'm just.
I was asking.
That's.
Peter likes to manage the meeting. So what if it turns out that could you use support to take a number of actions that generates federal subsidy units that then can be in turn used to preserve or redevelop state-owned affordable housing that is actually the creation of new affordable housing.
So
I guess I didn't articulate that very
Yeah, but that's
clearly.
okay.
no, so I was going to say, a lot of times people ask a question about allowable use and they describe the project, but they leave out actually what CPA is going to actually pay for. So your example, tell me what the CPA funds would be used for. What would they actually pay for?
Staff support that creates applications that goes to the federal government that causes these federal subsidy units become available for the creation of new affordable housing.
But are they already affordable units?
The ones that are
Can we?
too much in the weeds, maybe.
We're a little in the weeds, let's deal with this,
Yeah.
okay? Because that's a fair question, where it's a little more nuanced than Reg is articulating, but I think that let's put it this way, I think that what we've learned tonight is issues of allowable use are, as we've heard this over and over again, it's more of an art than it's an art and a science. And Stuart's an available resource. And so I think that we can rely on him. Is that okay, Stuart? And let me
Oh,
ask you
yeah,
this.
absolutely.
How do you want the communications to happen from our committee to you? Do you want it through our staff? Do you want it through the chair?
Absolutely not. No, we'll talk to anyone, honestly. We don't want to create any barriers to you guys getting the information you need. So
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear. Okay, so that means you're careful with this crew, by the way. I'm just, so you will get those questions, okay? And so if it's okay, Rich, I just want to follow up because I have a question or a comment, which is that support. I've read and reread the language of that definition at least a half dozen times. And it can truly be read pretty narrowly, or it can be read in a rather liberal way, depending on how you read the modifying clauses and whether or not you believe a comma should be in a particular place or not. But we're now saddled, in my opinion, with the DOR IGR of 2019, which I think it's okay for me to say this, takes a very narrow view of the use of support for community housing. And now you're saying that's my view, but you're also saying that some of the suggestions you were making about what support meant and how it could be used. I think, I don't want to step on any, I don't want to create a controversy, but it sounded a little bit like it might not be necessarily compliant with the DOR regs.
You are absolutely right.
Okay, so that's interesting. So
the DOR, and you and I delved into this a little bit on our phone call a couple of weeks ago, Peter, but DOR's opinions are advisory. There's a difference between a law that has regulations and DOR's opinions on a law. DOR has the authority to write regulations on CPA in Section 17. They have never done so. And writing regulations is a whole process. It includes public hearings, it includes advisory panels, it includes peer review. It's an official process that you have to go through if you write regulations for a law. If you don't follow that process, there are no regulations for the law, and there are no regulations for CPA. So DOR also publishes their opinions, which they do in something called an IGR, an informational guideline release is what IGR stands for. And it says usually right on the cover or in the first paragraph, this expresses the official opinion of the Department of Revenue, but it's not a regulation. So we don't agree with some things in that IGR. I think I told you the whole story about how there was a change in leadership there, and we were told that we would be part of the peer review of it, and then all of a sudden it just came out when they changed leadership and Kathleen left, and we didn't get a chance to express what we felt on that. And I will tell you that once DOR puts something out, they're never taking it back. They are not taking it back ever. We don't agree with a few of the things in there, not a lot, but there are some things we don't agree with. And even DOR will tell you, they're not the final decision maker. We're certainly not a decision maker in any way, shape, or form. Your town council is the final decision maker. So we definitely have examples of where towns go to their town council and says, here's what DOR says, but here's what the coalition's opinion is, and here's what our take on it is. Can we do this? And if your town council says fine, you have no issue. You have no issue. It's your town council that matters, not DOR.
Okay, but I think so. It may be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but have you had circumstances where you've conferred with town council and representatives of CPC? No sidebar conversations. Dave Harrer, no sidebar conversations. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor. Just say yes, Your Honor.
Objection, you're overruled.
Okay. So is that, I just want to clarify the procedure. Okay, sorry, Dave. So are there circumstances where you have the town council on the phone or conferring with you and a representative of the CPC regarding kind of knotty, kind of difficult issues of eligibility?
Yep, just did it last week with Jay Tallerman from Kingston about a project they wanted to do with the Kingston CPC and myself and Jay, who's their town council. So yeah, we have done that. We don't do it a ton. A lot of lawyers, Peter, don't want to hear anything from people who aren't lawyers. I have to say. So sometimes folks are very dismissive of what we have to offer. And other times, some town councils like this particular one, Jay, really wants to know what's going on out there in the world with CPA. So it just depends.
All right, that's the extent of my questions. Jean McKnight has her hand up.
Yes, in our town, we have an affordable housing trust fund. I'm sure you're familiar with that, many towns can establish, and they have amazing powers. Our town has not done much with its Affordable Housing Trust Fund yet. But the League of Women Voters is beginning a study of our town's Affordable Housing Trust Fund and looking into what other towns have done. And it occurs to me that there may be activities that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund can do that could be CPA funded. And that, Stuart, you may know of examples. And I don't necessarily mean you should tell us all about that tonight, but it also, if the initiative is coming from the town itself, at the very same time the league has said we want to study this, the town is taking the initiative to have some meetings and talk about its Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Could you talk with us? Is there enough to talk about there?
Yeah, so there actually are two phenomenal resources on Affordable Housing Trust information. One is an Affordable Housing Trust guidebook put out by the Massachusetts Housing Partnership that we helped edit and write. And the other is an even larger, huge CPA and affordable housing soup to nuts with ideas and things that other communities have done. Both publications the links are on our website, but Jean, I can send you directly to the link, or Peter, if you want me to send it to you and Cecilia, and you can distribute it to everybody. I can do it that way.
The Mass Partnership publication, and
yes.
then there's a one. Okay, I think okay.
They're both from MHP, both the one on specifically on trusts and the general housing. And Jean, Mass Housing Partnership has one employee who spends a good deal of time working on housing trusts. Her name is Shelley Gehring, Goehring, and I'll send you her contact information as well. And she will come talk to you about housing trusts. And she knows more about housing, much more about housing trusts than we do.
Thank you.
No problem. She's terrific. We've worked with her. She's been doing this for almost as long as me. And we work, I just called her today, as a matter of fact, and left a message for her. So we talk all the time, and she's absolutely terrific.
Okay. Is there anyone's hands up, or we're ready to move on? Okay, good. Let's go to the next slide.
I think I'm pretty close to the end here. And Peter, I think there's only 2 or 3 left. If you want to call it a night, we can, or I can roll through these real quick.
Sure. Just flip through them and we'll, that way I have a completion fetish. So let's get through it.
Okay. Folks always ask, who can apply for CPA funds? And the law actually says absolutely nothing about who can apply for CPA funds. The interesting part of CPA is it doesn't say anything about the application process at all. The law starts where it says the CPC shall make recommendations for, and then it lists all the allowable uses. So the whole application phase is completely local in terms of what you do. But by and large, most of the projects are to government entities and grants to nonprofits. I don't think the legislature even considered that CPA would be a program that would give grants to nonprofits. I think they wrote the law specifically for thinking that all the projects would be on municipal land, because it doesn't say anything in the entire law about, 501c3 grants. And there's definitely some things that you need to do, with a greater degree of scrutiny if you're giving money to a nonprofit. But CPA does a ton of that sort of work. And we have one community that does no government grants. They don't give any money to the town. It's all community groups from their town. So those are the 2 main pieces. There's nothing wrong with the 3 categories down below, but it's just more difficult to give CPA funds. It's pretty almost impossible to give it to a non-incorporated entity like a neighborhood group or a neighborhood association or Friends of the Senior Center that's not a 501c3. Those folks sometimes apply for funding, but there's really not a good way to give them funding directly. Individual homeowners, sometimes with historic homes, we have 2 very successful grant programs that do individual homeowner grants in Cambridge and Springfield, and we have a whole article on them in our technical assistance section if you ever wanted to do those type of things. not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of paperwork involved. And then sometimes people who are in a downtown commercial district, who have a beautiful historic building, will apply for money to do work on their privately owned historic building. But if there's public benefit to that, particularly the facade of the building facing facing downtown, there might be some public benefit to doing that. You just have to be very careful, and probably you'd want to get a preservation restriction on that facade if you gave money to a privately owned building. So that's some comments on folks who can't apply for the funding. Oh, it was just that last slide. So there you go. I did the express version, Peter, but we still went way over. And my apologies if that.
Oh, that's okay. And we'll let people know too, for all of us, but especially new members, there's a 1 hour or 2 hour webinar that's available through your site. I think it's 1 hour long webinar, right?
Yep. There's actually two. One hour, just kind of basics of CPA webinar with a lot of the things that are in here reviewed. And then there's a 30-minute bonding presentation, everything you want to know about bonding CPA projects, a separate video webinar.
Oh, speaking of bonds, we wind up in 2029 with the town. Okay, so I was off. Okay. All right. Last question, I think, was Bob Dermody. Okay. All right. I think that's it. Stuart, thank you again. And we'll have you back probably not next year, but the year following, maybe every year. I don't know.
No problem. I'm happy to do it. We love working with Needham. And Peter, I'll send you and Celia the information on Shelley and those two guidebooks, and then you can distribute it to everybody.
Good. And you're going to be hearing from these committee members. I promise you that.
Okay. Good. Give us a little time. It is a busy time right now, obviously, with all the towns rushing to town meetings. So,
probably not now, next year,
right.
On eligibility questions, things like that. Okay. All right.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great seeing you all.
Thank you, Stuart.
Okay. Let me tell you what let me talk about our must-dos, and then we may make some adjustments. Okay. I just don't want to. I just want to be sensitive to everyone's time. So what I need to come out of this meeting with, for those of you who were last week, heard to say this, which is we're going to appear before the Finance Committee next week. We're going to gather at 5:30, prepare for our presentations for the following week, and then at 7:30, I'll as chair, and then folks will come with me. Hopefully, maybe most people will come with me to the Finance Committee. And what I'd like to do before the Finance Committee is just provide them with a summary of each of the applications. In this year, we probably would do the applications plus the due diligence questions and the answers. Then I provide them with a short memo describing generally each of the applications. And all of the years past, I've provided them with a sense of the committee with a lot of cautionary language, which is we haven't had our public hearing. We haven't met with the Finance Committee. We haven't met with the Select Board. We haven't completed our due diligence. We haven't completed our consult with our Finance Director. But with that in mind, this is what each of the individual committee members, I don't name names. So I'd ask, so I might say words to the effect of for DeFazio Playground, all the members were strongly in favor. One member expressed some hesitation given the scope of the project, and just so we want to be, in my mind, try to be a fair broker of information to the Finance Committee and to the Select Board, but really that also can facilitate their response back to us. So for me, the must-dos are to go through each of these applications and do that, have a general discussion, but really probably go right to polling the members, and where I ask you can say one word or 2 word, you can have a brief explanation of what your concerns are. And it gives me the information and data I need to provide a very brief summary with lots of cautionary language that we're still in the middle of the process. So I would like to go through that, and that's what I would like to walk out of here with, so I can prepare that. And then other than that, every other matter on the board here can go to next week if we want. Jean and I have been working on the updates to the CPA plan. you have that in a red line format and a clean format. The IGR guidance has been distributed. One caveat on that is that, and I know that some of us have read it, Reg provided an email to me, which was probably a good basis for a discussion. And I wrote a reply to each of his comments, which I thought might facilitate a discussion, but we didn't get that distributed in the packet. So we could put it up and go through it. But I think it's kind of secondary to what I think is kind of an important, it's important to have this discussion tonight. But Rick Zambone has his hand up. And so let's hear from Rick, and then I want your input about how to proceed. Okay, but that would be my suggestion. But Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I noticed Cecilia's back with us, and I just wanted to check with her on, we have a bunch of outstanding information requests that have been generated. Where are we with respect to receiving all of the responses for those? I was kind of hoping we'd have them for tonight's meeting.
I haven't received any additional responses from any applicant. So
Okay.
everything I've received.
Okay, so there are, when our meeting ended last week, we gave to the representative of the Housing Authority, representative proponent, Reg Foster, the list of, we kind of got an agreed upon list of questions. So Rick, your question, I think maybe to be put more directly, when might we expect answers to those additional questions? Is that fair?
That's a fair, and and also with respect to the playground too. I mean, it's, there were some outstanding, I don't know if we have them all back. Do we? Respond
not sure.
to the questions?
We'll deal with each one. I thought that I think we have the playground answers back.
Oh, we do. Okay, fine. That's
Okay.
then
And
it's just the.
We asked Reg for a lot. We asked NHA for a lot of information. So do you have some sense, Reg, about when you might be responding to that?
I just got a status update today. I just got a status update today, and I will get a final draft of all the answers on Friday. And we'll try to turn them around, not expecting any catastrophic, original work needing to be done. So I would expect to either turn that around on Friday or open a business, sometime on Monday to Cecilia. And if you could be on the lookout for that, then you can turn that around to everybody else here.
Okay, so it's a possibility. I'll let Rick's Rick's got a little bit more of the expertise in handling these logistic matters, but I guess the possibility might be to discuss 01. We could discuss 01 tonight, and then, but we get some additional information. We're going to meet at 5:30. But it makes it a little hard for me to prepare the memo, but that's okay too. I can get information that I need tonight. You could caveat your response. You could say, if you're Rick, you may say, I need X or Y information before I can answer this question. I think I would go with that. And so I just want to be fair to the proponent, fair to the committee, and try to move the process along. Does that make sense to folks? Well, is that all right, Rick? Is that?
Yeah, it's fine from my perspective. I just, before and you've couched the words appropriately, before I offer a sense, I need some answers. And when we get those, I mean, I think everybody wants to move forward with the projects. I just think the question is what timing of amounts, things like that. And I just think that we need to get those answers. I don't want to preface my remarks, but we need to get some of that information before I can come down with a stronger sense one way or the other.
Okay, that's fine. And I think that points toward maybe doing something a little bit different, which is that we might be talking a little bit more about this at 5:30 before I go in to see FinCom, 5:30 next Wednesday. But I still think we should start with the process, because it seems to me that we can at least talk about the Phasio. And we may be able to talk about seabeds. Maybe we'll think about that. It seems that but we'll start. When we start, let's at least try to clear out the Phasio and get a sense from folks. And how about if we do it in that order? I just wanted, first of all, let's confirm Claxton is off the board. Is that correct, Cecilia?
That is correct. The
Okay,
Parks
so
and
now
Rec
we have-
Commission voted.
Okay, good. So instead of reporting, so, all right, let's, let me deal with the financial issues. That's an easy one. Just give me a minute. Jean, are you checking out something?
Yeah, I don't have the 5:30 down.
Yeah, but that's because we're making it up a little bit on the fly here. We were gonna talk about adjusting the time. So we wanna, is everyone available at 5:30 next Wednesday? So that we can prep for our public hearing. And then we can go into the FinCom at 7 o'clock. Can we do that?
Wednesday, March 8th.
I am not available at 5:30. This is Dina. I can be there at 7, but I cannot, I can try and be there earlier, but it's unlikely I'll be able to.
Okay, Joe Barnes.
I'm out of state until the 19th of March, so I don't think I can do the next two meetings.
Okay, so you can't do the next 2 meetings. Okay. Anyone else?
Peter, I'm gonna be late next week. At the earliest I can get there is probably 6, a little after.
I'll be here.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I just have to check with my husband and make sure he can take care of our granddaughter. If he can, and if he isn't busy doing something else, I will be there at 5:30.
okay, so let's shoot for Laura Dorfman. How you doing up there? Laura? Is Laura?
So sorry.
Laura?
I'm muted.
That's okay. Can you think you can make it beginning at 5:30 next week?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. I want to think a little bit about the fact that Rick can't be there until 6, but let's still keep it on the board for 5:30. And I think what we'll do is, let's start with that. But so let's,
Point of information. Mr.
sure,
Chair.
sure.
Is that meeting a hybrid possibility?
Yes.
Great.
Both
Okay,
this meeting and the FinCom, and I will say that the Finance Committee is looking at building other DPW articles. So if we need to push back CPC to maybe 7:30 or 8 in front of the FinCom, depending on how late everybody else wants to be there, that is also a possibility.
Okay, Joe Barnes, can you make it?
If it's a hybrid model, yes, I can do next week.
All right, we're still rolling in hybrid model, okay? Plus, I think even under those, yeah, so okay, so great. So now,
Peter,
Looks like
can I
Dina-
interrupt and ask something real quick?
sure.
And we could talk offline about this. I was not aware of, is there going to be a meeting weekly, like for the next, how long? I mean, it sounds like next week and the week after, definitely, correct?
Yeah, so we have a calendar that we put together. And so it was, and the latest one was on January 12th that Cecilia sent to everyone.
Okay,
And you'll see that we scheduled our meetings March 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th.
okay. I have actually been swamped. I have not had a chance to look at that yet. I'll have to talk with you online because I will not be able to make all of these. So
Okay. We'll talk offline.
okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, good, good. All right, so with that,
On the 8th meeting, did you say it would be a meeting at 5:30 of the CPC, followed that same night by the FinCom?
Yes.
Meeting with us? And
oh, well, we're meeting with them.
Can we go
We're-
first
we're
to
yeah, it's
consulting.
their meeting. and
It's
we're
their
coming
meeting.
to it.
We're
Convenient,
coming
yeah.
to that.
Well,
Yeah,
And what
We
time?
don't sit there.
that's a 7.
At 7.
I can talk to
Okay.
Dave. I had to move some things today.
You're cross-talking now too. That's a violation of the open meeting law, and that's why I bring it. Okay. So
No, it's not.
well, cross-talking is, but there is a back bay.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Okay,
never saw that.
all right, hand up, Laura Dorfman.
Yes, Mike, I have, I understand the questions that we're waiting for answers on, but I have like a couple of comments to those. Can I just send those? I don't want to make this more complicated, but can I send those comments to Cecilia? Just because I've just been looking at what we did last year and what the FAQs last year were for town meeting. And there's some discussion about zoning and time frame, and I just want to kind of reference those in
Oh,
the
you have a
context.
so are you saying you have additional questions for 01 or 02?
Well, they're just comments based on, I went back to 2022's FAQs on
Okay,
this.
why don't we do this? Yeah, send your comments to Cecilia.
Okay,
Yes, and then she will distribute them in an appropriate manner. Great.
okay, thanks.
Okay, so now, well, okay, so let's actually do this. We have a little bit of, let's start with the Fazio playground, okay? And Laura, you don't need your hand is, you're okay, right? You can just take your hand down, okay? And let's see. The Fazio is a request for a sum of money for design purposes. I think it's $35,000.
You are correct.
To design what later will be a redeveloped tot lot at the Fazio facility. We've sent due diligence questions to Park and Rec. Stacy Mulroy has responded. We've actually had some discussion about eligibility. And so why don't we, this is again, with the caveat that we really do need to hear from Finance Committee, Select Board, the public especially, and have our, and our Finance Director. What I'd like to do is just quickly go around the table and see what kind of a sense of the committee of, and I'll just make it as, we'll say, leaning, what kind of language we have. Joe Barnes is the best at nuancing this, leaning toward, but so you can use your own language to provide us with some sense of your assessment of it, understanding that this is not a vote and not a commitment, and we're in a fluid situation, and it's just to provide some information to the boards that we're reporting to, the Select Board and the Finance Committee. Okay, so why don't we?
Mr. Chair, I would appreciate you cease and desist from the introductions you provide prior to my speaking. I am unable to live up to your expectations. So having said that.
That's why, all right, I'm calling on you first.
Okay, well, let me just say that I think that it's a worthwhile project. I think that I would think that the 35,000 would be an information gathering to allow us to make a wiser decision going forward. So I am generally in favor of taking a further look at this project.
Okay, does that, okay, good. Are you, does that mean you're generally in favor of the application? I don't mean to lock you in, okay, but.
Yes, I am.
Are you saying generally in favor of looking a little farther?
Yes, I am, Counselor. I am in favor of application.
I'm so tired.
I
I
don't-
just want everybody to know. If I fall asleep,
I'm sorry.
we
Okay, I'm
can
just trying,
jog my.
Reg, I'm doing the best I can, okay? Bob Germany, thank you, Joe.
It's my third meeting this week.
Based on the data at hand, I'm in favor of the project, period.
Laura Dorf,
I feel the same way.
Reg Foster, before you fall asleep.
I am with our esteemed vice chair. Unless something unusual comes up in any of the other review sessions, I think we should go forward with this project.
Dina Hannigan.
Sorry, I have a
You only
mouth.
have one answer, Dina. You're the Park and Rec representative. There's only one answer for you.
Yes, I am in favor.
All right.
Okay, Dave Harrell.
I'm in favor, and I can't imagine anything that would change my mind.
No, don't jinx it.
And Jean McKnight.
Certainly, I'm in favor. I have one concern. I think that the project, it has to be clear that the project is the area, the small area that is intended to be a new tot lot. There has been discussion of, oh, maybe there'll be a dog park, maybe there'll be this or that on the land that, and I don't want to have the money we're getting to be to be studying that other land. I want to make it very clear that it's just for the top lot area.
Just for the top
Yes,
zone.
I'm not sure. Can I answer? I'm not sure.
Yes,
Yeah, there's not been a discussion on our ends as for a dog park there, so we don't have to worry about that.
Oh, I thought it was mentioned at,
and let's hear from Dave Herrer, he's
Right.
with Conservation Commission.
Right, I think the conversation about the dog park is just, blue sky or whatever,
Okay.
but I don't think the Conservation Commission would ever approve a dog park here. And I'm a dog lover.
Okay. All right. And Rick Zimbo.
Yeah, I'm generally inclined to move forward with this. I do have something, and it probably, I don't know where else to bring it up, but I just bring it up for consideration, your attention. Now that the Claxton Field project has been withdrawn, I took a look at the capital plan that we have that we presented last year and the funds this year, and I took a look at the town meeting warrant. And I put a call into Dave Davison just to get some information from him. But all the projects right now are tending to be funded out of specific buckets. And I'd like to follow up with this. My thought would be to fund all of the projects that are still alive out of free cash. We have enough free cash, and so that requires just an additional follow-up. And I think that's important when we're talking to the Finance Committee as well, and that's why I bring it up now.
Are you saying, when you say all of the projects, you're referring now to DeFazio, free cash, right?
Yep.
But you're not suggesting 01 and 02 should be funded out of free cash, are you?
I'd like to have that discussion.
Okay. Okay, good. Sure. All right. And then, so that leaves me, I would say I'm generally in favor of the project. Okay. Okay, now we lead to the first of, I think I would suggest that we probably should leave Linden Chambers to a 5:30 next Wednesday discussion. We would get some additional information from Reg and from Margaret Moran. And so I think that would be my proposal. Any objections to that or discussion?
Just one comment, Peter.
You can have a comment and then Reg wants to make a comment. Go ahead.
I took the opportunity to watch Reg and Company make their presentations to the select board and the planning committee. Without commenting on whether I stayed awake or fell asleep.
Rick, it's really hard to hear you.
Rick, you're getting garbled.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, let's either reboot.
All right, let me.
There you go. We got you again.
Is that better?
Yes. All right, good. Good catch, Laura.
Yeah, thanks. I watched the two presentations and in both instances, I think there were a lot of good questions that came out of those, more from the planning perspective. And I was hoping at some point that maybe Reg and Jean could just talk about those discussions, because I think they weigh and they're relative to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So we can hold those till next week, or we can do it tonight. But I just think the whole committee, if they didn't watch the discussion and presentation, would benefit from hearing it.
Okay, so let's see. First of all, I think that that we have the time tonight based on what we're dealing with procedurally. We're asking a lot of Reg, who's been in meetings, all week. And everybody has the video in front of them. But I think the more information we can get out now so that it's perking with people, and it'll cause our discussion to be a little shorter in part 2 of this meeting. I think that's a good idea. I think it's a fair request, and I don't mean to put Jean or Reg on the spot. Why don't I start with Jean, who she's on the planning, for those of you who don't know, she's on the planning board. For those of you who don't know, the Housing Authority presented before both the Select Board and the Housing and the Planning Board about its proposed redevelopment of Linden Chambers in particular.
I'd like to go back just to Rick and ask, when you refer to the discussion or issues that were discussed at the planning board meeting, what are you thinking of in particular?
Mr. Chair, just to respond to Jean, I was thinking more about the discussion about the options that were discussed with respect to zoning and what needs to take place and the timetable. I thought that was very interesting. I thought there was a couple of good suggestions, including one, I think, by you that talked about the need for an attorney with specialties in that area to help shepherd the project along. And also a discussion of the timeline and whether the planning board could respond to meet the needs of the housing authority. And I think that's kind of critical to this whole project.
Okay, if you like, I'll start speaking to that because what is a very important issue in which route to take to get to the point where you have the zoning in place to do the project, no question, is the timing for that. Because of certain, and Reg can explain better, certain applications that need to be made at a certain time. And I think it was explained that at that time, and it would be, I think, the fall, this coming fall, like November, the housing authority has to file an application that lays out just what it's going to do. It might not necessarily have the zoning in place, but they have to have a clear path to getting the zoning in place over the next couple of months. So I think by January or something. So the idea is, the concern is that it really would be difficult to put zoning in place for these housing authority projects at the fall special town meeting. So that the best route might be what's called a friendly 40B or a local initiative program under General Laws Chapter 40B. Even though we've met our quota in our town, that all that means is that developers who are turned down can't go to court and say, give me my permit. We can still do permits under 40B, so-called friendly. So that may be the best route to begin that process soon. And I was suggesting, and I know it's part of what was put out in the the very careful what is the money going to be spent on. Clearly, expertise to determine what the zoning issues are and how zoning is to be accomplished. Hiring a person to do that was always part of the budget.
Yeah, we were going to do that anyway.
Yes.
Your suggestion, basically.
Yes, and the other thing I was adding to that is going back, doing a little historic expedition into papers in the town hall to find out how did these developments get built in the first place without there being a rezoning. These developments are in general residence or single residence zoning districts in our town. So they never were zoned for the density that they currently exist at. And my speculation is that they were allowed to be built with the housing authority being perceived as a state agency, not subject to local zoning. And then I don't want to speak to the case law of what status does that give current buildings to be transferred to the new entity. There's a new entity involved, which makes it complicated so that the development can get a low-income tax credits so that it isn't just held by the housing authority anymore in a simple way. So how can the new entity take advantage of that same kind of zoning? And that's a matter of case law. You need an attorney. And it would be helpful to know the answer to that question as the housing authority goes forward. So
Okay,
that-
so is
let
that-
me add to that,
You-
yeah, if I may. And so, very good summation, Counselor. And I'll take it backwards from the last point you made. The ownership issues and so forth, that will be, comes up every single time in any one of these tax credit projects. But we did a debrief session this morning for 2 hours on the comments last night that came up in the planning board meeting. Basically, your suggestions about doing the historical research was like, that's a really good idea. So that we already kicked that off this morning. And it's not going to happen instantaneously. It's not going to be something that is going to be an input that's going to be ready, but there may be something out there. And it's not just the one thing you speculated, but it was like, well, maybe there's some ancient home rule petition that everybody's already forgotten about, since then. I mean, it could be anything, but it's certainly worth looking at, because it may trump, or it may be something that can be reused or not, but you won't know unless you look for it. So that we will be doing that. And and then working our way backwards from the point, and catch me if I miss one of them here, because I am pretty tired. We are going to have that kind of municipal zoning tax legal assistance. That was always part of the plan, because you can't do this sort of thing over the next few months without somebody that really knows what they're doing in that specific area of law. And then the whole discussion of the best avenue, that was a preliminary discussion that we intentionally had teed up for the planning board in case the planning board wanted to take the time to do it last night. So we were all prepared for that. The planning board only wanted to do a 20-minute session, but I think we did about an hour. There were several different points of view, and we're going to follow up with a staff meeting between, housing authority staff and experts and Lee, and kind of digest. We're already trying to schedule that, digest what it was that we heard last night. And what you correct my recollection too, what we heard was a willingness on the planning board, certain members of the planning board saying, look, we'll get it on to fall town meeting. If that's what you need, we're going to make it happen. I know we're busy with all these other things. There were certain members that were saying that, but we'll meet every day to make that happen. And then Lee said, well, wait a minute, we have an awful lot of things to do here. Maybe a local initiative program is better. It exists actually for this sort of purpose, when all the entities in town all agree on something they want to get done. And, then, maybe that's better. So, and then there was also what came out, I think, more clearly, because it was asked at this committee a week or two ago, when was it, the 8th, and we've been following up, is to get more concrete about the funding cycle and the construction funding and so forth. And so the absolute answer is that we have to, what you said, very good, thank you very much, that the state funding cycle that we have to hit requires us to have the zoning in place and nailed down by October 2023, or we skip a year and we add $2 or $3 million to the cost of the project. Take your pick. And that's when pre-applications need to go in October 2023.
I had said November, but it's October.
It's October. But that was close enough. That's pretty good. And then let me just finish. And so therefore, you can, if the zoning, the planning board wanted to do it and had the capacity to do it, then we could go to town meeting and get it approved that way. And that has some advantages, because it's not appealable. It's not, somebody can't file a lawsuit and object to it. But there's Lee's comment and the capacity of the planning board to really do it there was talk also of, well, can you hire that municipal lawyer? Can they just draft of the zoning changes we need and put that in? There was also talk of how does this play with the MBTA Community Preservation Act zoning changes we're going to make, which we're definitely not putting in the fall town meeting. And what if we want to change what we do by way in the LIP? And when we get to Springtown meeting, and we were all saying, well, that's no problem if that's the case. We just need to have zoning that we can get these funds for in place in the fall. Now, again, this is all a bunch of people talking about conceptually about something for the first time. And then there was the I think there was one more point and I've lost it actually, but that was the tenor of the conversation. And so let's just go to the outcome, which is I think staff will start to work between the planning board and the housing authority consultants, experts. There's also some communication that needs to be had with the zoning board of appeals that comes out of last night's meeting. Is they're going to become a more important participant potentially here. But the key thing is, and it bears on the funding commitment, is that we not only need the zoning in place, but we also need the funding, and this is the debrief tomorrow morning. This is going to be explained in the stuff we're trying to get ready for Monday. I'm sorry, for Friday or Monday, is we actually need the town funding commitment, the entire rest of the commitment in place for the fall town meeting in order to be able to hit the state annual funding cycle here.
Okay, so you're gonna tell us by Friday what the construction number is.
Yeah,
Okay,
we already know it. I'll give it to you tonight.
well, that's okay. I don't, it's,
But of course,
okay. So,
Yeah.
well, no, that's,
but more important, more or less, whether it's 30 or $35 million, it's the funding of the sources of funding for the construction.
right, that's, right,
Yeah, and have the town piece of the nut
right, that's.
that is needed, if I may, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, right, okay, good. All right, so, all right, I got a hand up from Laura. And Rick, I just want to turn back to Rick, because he was at the meeting. Rick, if you have any questions or comments or anything else.
Or did
you
we
think that they
miss
should
something?
unpack, that would help.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, other than the fact that I thought Gene and Reg did an outstanding job of relaying what happened, and that's what I wanted to do, is just get a sense for the full committee as to, how difficult this task is. It's not like building a playground. I mean, this is huge and it's complex. And I think Margaret Moran, the one thing I'd add, said the schedule's very tight. I think she mentioned that last night. And I think everybody would agree with that, given some of these dates that have been thrown out.
Well, it's tight on, is less tight on the lip side, actually.
Right.
That
would make sense, right?
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, Laura Dorfman, hand up.
Sorry. So I just, and I don't know if this is purposeful, but I'm asking a question about Reg's FAQs for the town meeting last year in May of 22. So at that time, there was a question about the zoning changes. And the response was that figuring out the changes required is a major task of the schematic design that will be funded by Article 17 if approved at town meeting. So my question is, was there any conversation about the zoning at that time? Because, I find us here now kind of feeling crammed for a timeline on the zoning. Did anything happen after that article was approved and related to zoning? Were there any conversations or?
What you're asking, the Housing Authority received the grant last spring. And part of it had to do with using the money to address zoning.
Correct.
What has the Housing Authority done with respect to zoning between the time of the grant and, let's say, today?
Correct.
Okay, fair enough.
The
Fair
answer
enough.
is that we spent until December hiring the architect and engineering designer firm that was going to be paid for this by this money. So we didn't spend any of the money. We didn't spend a dime of the money. Didn't have any experts on board and had a project kickoff on January 9th. So we're like a month and a half into the beginning of the project. And had we been able to hire that firm midsummer, last summer, or let's say fall, would be further down the road, but we weren't able to.
All right, so the kickoff was 1/9/23. That's effectively when you hired your A&E.
Right.
Your
And they
A&E.
spend the first month just figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, right, okay. All right, there is, and so I think we did, as part of our big compendium of questions that we gave Reg, we're really trying to tease out what have you done? Where are you gonna spend it? What's the timeline? And it's gonna include answers. I think that will get sussed out a little bit. Does that answer your question, Laura?
Yeah,
Right.
and I'm not trying to be, punitive, or critical. I'm just, this is what was stated that, at the time we gave the funds. So, and it was addressed to a schematic design concept. I don't even know what that means. It's not a person. So I just want to understand how that was supposed to relate to talking about the zoning and the potential zoning issues. And it sounds like maybe a person who was going to do that schematic design was going to be the person that was going to deal with some zoning issues. I just want to be clear, because right now, if that's the case, who is that person and who is that company? In the absence of that, you guys need someone to do that. Right?
Okay, so two things. First of all, that's a good question. That is what the kind of type of question that we were reducing the writing, just to be fair to Rich. He's trying, it's a big project.
I know.
I know, and you're not, the question is a good question.
I can answer the question.
And so let's have him answer it, but I also would encourage you to, you can put it in writing to Cecilia, just a quick email to her.
It's already,
Okay, and go ahead.
it's already
Is
part
it
of
in
the
there? It's a
question.
part of
It's
it.
already in
Okay, go ahead. Just give it a quick.
I know.
I know, it's just 5:30 before a FinCom. I mean, that just doesn't give a lot of time for people to absorb the answers and respond. That's all. So,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well,
and Reg,
hopefully
I
we'll get it.
apologize. I know you're
No
going
worries.
through a lot. I
No worries. So hopefully you'll have the answers in writing a couple of days before that. So
Okay.
The answer to your question is that it's not one person to be hired for schematic design, which I'll explain what it is. It's a 20-person team of consultants that has been hired, led by the architect firm BH&A, that is going to be spending that 1.386 million and the other million after that. And what it is if I gave you a schematic design, you would look at it and say, gee, if I was a construction company, I could build this entire project. I'd know exactly how many stories there are. I'd know how many apartments there are. I'd know how big they are. I'd know what the bathrooms were going to look like and the community spaces and where the parking is and whether we have underground garages and whether there's solar panels on the roof. And so it would look to, it's a stack of blueprints, that size documents that spell out everything that is going to can apprise that project for the whole 152 units, turning into, let's say, 252 units or 300 units. And once you get a sense of what that is, and we'll be getting a sense of that around May or June, you can take that schematic design to your zoning lawyer experts of the kind that Gene was talking about and say, here's the existing zoning for what is there in the chambers, and this is what we want to build. So what changes do we need to make to the Needham zoning bylaws to allow us to build that. And you then can schedule a meeting with the planning board, so probably in June-ish, and say, this is what we, if we go down the town meeting route, which my guess is we might not, but this is what we want to do. These are the changes, turn those into zoning bylaws and put them on the town meeting warrant for the fall. Or you can take this very complicated thing that takes $1 million to create, you know, with all these 20 consultants doing everything. So they're not just making nice drawings, they're saying, does Eversource have enough electricity coming into the neighborhood to be able to support this project? Or do they have to upgrade the electricity? And are there Conservation Commission wetland issues that have to be taken care of? And what are we going to do about that with the Conservation Commission and get their order of conditions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's utilities, there's traffic, there's parking. And you can take that, all that information and do another route, which is this, what's called a comprehensive permit, where instead of going to the planning board never does comprehensive, you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and you say, here's what we want to do. You know, please issue us, I'm very much oversimplifying, please issue us a comprehensive permit. The ZBA checks with all the other Needham boards, so they check with the Board of Health and the planning board and everybody else, building department. And then, you know, said, great, here's our order in September 2023 or October 2023. You have this comprehensive permit, and you then take that to your preliminary application for funding to the town, along with another hopeful CPA award for the fall town, and you say, please, sir, may I have some porridge to DHCD? And you got the funding for the project.
Okay, good. All
And you
right,
haven't
so
skipped a year.
okay, good. All right, so
It's
if you
even
were,
more complicated than Reg said. I was going to add a couple of things.
It is more complicated. I was trying to do it short because Mr. Chair opened the door to this conversation.
okay, so first, let me just, a couple things. What I'd ask Cecilia to do is we
Did
have,
Laura get her question answered?
I think, Laura, did you get your question answered?
Yes.
Okay,
I
so
just do think there needs to be a point person to deal with the zoning piece. It can't just be this group of people kind of muddling, you know, going about, and that's just my suggestion and my feeling. I almost feel like there needs to be a project manager. There needs to be a point person here.
There is.
okay.
That's all I have to
All right,
say.
so they have, okay, so so you could point that out, but that A&E firm is actually, they've worked on several of our town projects.
But it has a principal in charge.
Right, okay, just, all right. So here's, just in terms of going forward, just so Laura raised one question. She said, made a reference to 5:30 on Wednesday. It's not a lot. So we have, there's a lot of information that's already been provided to us. It's come in a couple of different pieces. So I think in fairness to, well, what we're going to do, actually, yes, we've had our conversation. Cecilia and I were talking about this. We're going to compile a package for each of the 3 applications, which will be the application plus the due diligence questions and the follow-up questions and the answers. So it's all going to be there in a packet. We're going to break them out in PDFs 01, 02, 03, or 01, 02, 04 rather. And so that's going to be available to you soon. We can get that out tomorrow, right? Or maybe we should wait till Friday till we get registered.
Yeah, it just.
But then what I would ask Cecilia to do is attach the additional information that the Housing Authority is being provided for 02 and 01 to that same document, that same PDF document, so that all of us then have a Bible of 01 and a Bible of 02. You've read some of it already. You can add it in the back, get some additional information in the back, but it'll all be kind of at your fingertips. And of course, you got to plow through it. And we're not making the ultimate decision on 5:30 on Wednesday. I'm just going to ask you for a sense of the committee. Then we're going to go before the finance committee, and we're going to go for a select board, and we're going to have a presentation at our public hearing. We're going to take public comments, and then we're going to meet again, and we're going to discuss it some more. Okay, so there's going to be plenty of time to deliberate And so, and plenty of time for you folks to catch up and read and to have any additional follow-up questions. I think the process is going to be fair and it will honor the process. So I just want to reassure you on that.
Point of information.
Point of information, sir, sure.
Are those gonna be separate PDFs by project?
Yes,
Thank you.
But one packet would be appreciated, I think. So this is then all, not one, yeah, one continuous PDF, not four for Limited Chambers and 3 for Paxton Field and Salem. Because I find it really hard to keep track. Cecilia has been sending things out
All right,
piecemeal,
yeah,
and it's been
okay, all right.
hard to keep track of everything for me. Is that what you're saying, Bob?
I don't think so.
no, he was saying the opposite.
All right.
He was saying 3 books, 01, 02, 04.
That's what I'm talking about.
But and then you said 1 PDF. I'm
No,
saying
no, for per project.
1 PDF per project.
That's what I asked. Thank you.
That's what I'm trying to say.
We are now all in agreement.
Right.
Okay, okay, you got it, right, Cecilia? Yeah, you got it. Okay. All right, Jean, do you want to add anything?
I just want to be clear that I'm going to hold off on sending any of them out until I get the documentation from Reg on behalf of the Needham Housing Authority. So that way I'm not sending out an incomplete packet and then having to resend it out, as long as everyone's okay with that.
Everyone should be okay with that because you
Okay.
already have that. Everyone has that information in some iteration in your email somewhere. Okay, all right.
No, I don't have anything to, thanks for asking.
Okay, you're right. You know, no additional comments or questions?
No.
Okay, good. All right, so now, I think that we may, I may risk it here and suggest that we table both 01 and 02 for discussion and sense of the board. Until 5:30. Is that okay? We don't need a motion. I'm just, okay, just, you know,
5:30 next week.
is that okay?
Yes.
All right, good. So then we still have a little bit of time. Give me 30 minutes, okay? And we can clear out a couple things. We have the updates to the CPA plan. All right. We're looking really good, I think. Well, actually, you know what? I'll let you be the judge of that. And I'm gonna attach I'm gonna make sure that Jean and I did the latest round. So that's way.
Yeah, look,
That way,
I
see,
looked it over tonight, looked good to me.
okay, see, I'm covering Jean, yeah, I get the cover of Jean. All right, so comments, general comments, nits, nats. But what I would propose is we're at the point now where we can we can present this to the finance committee on Wednesday. And for a document that they should review. We can present this when I meet with the select board. And
The CPA plan.
the CPA plan.
Mhm.
And we can present this to the planning board if you can get, and it'd be nice if I can get before before town meeting would be nice. Or we got a hand up from Rick Zimbo, but that's how I suggest that we proceed. Rick Zimbo.
Yeah, thank you once again, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to jump on this first. That's the only reason why I raised my hand. I thought the work you guys did, be it Jean's or yours, was outstanding. I thought that you addressed the concerns that we had and expressed last week as far as bringing everything up on somewhat of a level playing field. And I think the document, I think it's a document that the committee can be proud of. I really do. I think it's something that, as Stuart said earlier, we do every 5 years and we just update the names and the numbers in between. I thought it was a well-done job, or if there's some changes like the community playground committee or whatever it's called comes out with a report. I thought that was great. I really do. I think it's ready to go. I fully endorse it.
Okay, remind me, I want to make a comment about Park and Rec. Your hand. Mr.
Appendix page 18, the summary chart. It goes to 21. It goes to 20.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that kind of stuff until all the meat was
Okay.
edited.
It was not a critique, but a question. Are we ready to add any more years?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I got phobia of fiscal years.
Okay.
We
Jean?
we were told, wait until we've got all the substantive changes done before saying, well, that's misspelled or that
Yeah.
that's got double commas or something. Are you're gonna go over like
I'll
that?
go over it over the weekend. If we decide tonight that we're good with this, I'll go over and do all the formatting and all that kind of nitty gritty and then.
So, two things. First of all, we had a discussion about last week about what stakeholder group contributed more or less, and we started talking, I started, I think I mentioned a letter grade. By the way, I went through law school without letter grades. So, but
That explains everything.
I knew that's hanging, that was a hanging curveball.
You
That
did.
was a hanging.
Thank you so
curveball.
much. I needed
That is a
that.
hanging
Wow.
curveball. That was good.
I went
Reg.
to
That's
college
good.
that way.
What, okay.
Wow.
Nice, good, yeah.
Okay. All right, so, so there were, but I want everyone to know that, the way we asked for these stakeholders to contribute their efforts, it was a little, it was a little bit of a hodgepodge effort, right? So that, Gene McKnight, who's a volunteer, took the laboring oar for community housing. And so we didn't get the executive director, for example, the Needham Housing Authority to contribute, but Gene had that laboring oar. And with Park and Rec, we pushed to have Stacy Mulroy contribute. She's the basically the executive director for Park and Rec. So, and in fact, what I want to point out though is that Stacy, in fact, did make contributions. They came in late the last week. I put them in. You could see them in the red line. And we also figured out a way to finesse the introduction to give them a placeholder as well. So we got contributions on open space and Park and Rec. And so so I just want to point that out that I to the degree that anyone expressed some dissatisfaction about the efforts of any particular stakeholder, I just want to make sure everyone understands that I think that everybody did a good job. We drew from different resources in different ways. Okay, so just in fairness to everyone.
Well, I want to give a lot of credit to you, Peter, for putting it all together.
Thank you, Gene.
Yeah, you really did a great deal of work.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That makes me feel better in light of Regis.
No,
Peter?
don't take.
Yes, Dina,
Peter?
yes,
Do you have everything you need from Stacy at this point?
absolutely. And
Okay.
we had a healthy email exchange. She sent me information. Everything is fine.
Okay, great.
Um,
Thank you.
So let's just see. Oh, there's one other document that we didn't want, and this comes up in the context of the IGR. What we did do, Cecilia and I this was Cecilia actually. She spent the last weekend, probably a Sunday, working and reworking the policies and procedures section of the CPA. It's a separate document. Is it in here?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay, great. Okay, so you can see how she brought that up to mirror and address some issues that Reg brought up that based on his review of the IGR. But basically it mirrors the policies and procedures that we had discussed over the last 12 months or so that we think applicants should be aware of. The issue that Joe Barnes first initiated with respect to the obligation to do some reporting, the grant obligation of having a grant agreement, potential grant agreement, and then a clear outline of what happens once they submit an application, and we have it kind of mirror what we had discussed. So the one open issue I know that Reg has brought up is reconsider the timing between the date that the applications are due and when we first hear from the applicant. And some of that stuff, what I would propose in order to get this done is there's some stuff we can deal with after town meeting. Okay, but we've got a document here that I'd like to approve, get it signed, get it done. And there are some little issues, reporting issues, the reporting issues that Reg brought up, but that have come up. I think all of that stuff can be brought up in town meeting, but I think that this document is ready to go. And the last thing that I would like to bring up, and this kind of puts a bow on it now, and I'm sorry, I'm going in this little abstract way. Do you think we could put up Reg's IGR memo in my response? Because if that's okay, then, because it ties together, so Reg brought up some, some good concerns based on his review of the IGR. And I responded in red. And if you stand up, I'll just kind of quickly summarize. It's not, you could see from our discussion with Stuart that it's,
While she's doing that, may I make some comments?
yeah, sure.
That parallel what you heard from Gene. I also agree that we're down to the typo stage and, on this, and here are my comments, and I will be emailing them to you in soft copy form when I get home tonight here. I just didn't get a chance to do it. And I also think that the process document is a long way in the direction that where it needs to go. A good, good changes made there. I think there's a couple things that's worth doing, and I've also done them, and I also will email them out to you and Cecilia tonight here. But there's a step missing in the steps that I think should be added here. And I don't know if anybody else has had a chance to review this because of, obviously it came in very late. But the step, needs to be a step that covers what we do between February 1st and March 15th, roughly. In other words, the whole process of reviewing applications with applicants was just, Cecilia, please don't take this critically. It's just, I think it would be worth adding here. Step 3 goes right to, we consult with other boards and committees and hold a public hearing and make recommendations. And step 2, is we ask for detailed questions. But what we actually do when we receive the detailed questions and we ask the applicants to come in and make a presentation to the committee along with their experts, and we give them more questions and so forth, that's sort of missing. There's a whole month and a half missing in the steps. And I've written it all out this afternoon, and we'll send it out, and you can decide whether it's too much or it's worth adding. It's not very hard to add, it's just, it just isn't there. My other comment is that we also have these detailed questionnaires that have different questions than what is in step 1. They're different categories and different things, but it's very easy to fix and say, it ties it all together with another couple of sentences.
Did you make the changes?
I've made all the changes,
Right.
and I will be sending them out at whatever time you let us go home tonight. And I think, just offer that, because I think we are close to perfection here. And that's just one thing.
All right, so
And everything else is at the typo stage.
What about the plan? You're not making substantive comments on that?
Typos, I sent all the
Only
typos.
typos.
Yeah.
Right, okay, and, all right, and no margin comments, typos.
Typo.
Oh, red lines, right?
They're red line with comments and typos fixed.
Okay, good. All right, good, Reg, thanks. All right, hand up, Dermody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This document that I think you just had up there, Cecilia, on procedures,
Yeah,
is that part of the plan or a separate document?
that's a separate document.
Thank you. Okay.
That way we can make easier changes to it than.
Yeah, it doesn't need to go through this
Yep.
kind of vetting process that we're going through, but if we're, let's,
That's all I needed.
that's all. Okay, so we can get, all right, yes, Gene.
Just a formatting, so I think it should have page numbers. I think that might make I think it'll still fit on the same number of pages it has. I don't want to make it too long. But you've got some white space at the end of this. So I think even if it gets a little shorter, we're putting in page numbers. And this margin is a little bit below on the page. I think that would just read better and look better. And when you want to refer back to something, you want to say it's on page whatever.
Okay, hand up is Laura Dorf.
Just a quick question, and I don't know if it's overkill, but that little chart, which I've used a lot, that Stuart had put up, is that something that you feel like you want to stick in the plan somewhere, or no?
So I'm not a big fan of that chart. That's my personal preference. I think it really kind of simplifies what is a relatively complicated procedure. I think his more complicated and comprehensive chart is something that we've referred to, and I think it has been attached to different things in the past. There are charts that are attached to the IGR. There's something that's you can reduce the complexity of all of this to one page with, if you've ever sat on a jury, it's the equivalent of a jury verdict form, which again, I think that it does a disservice to what the process is, but it is a resource that could be referred to. So I'm a little hesitant to incorporate it in as part of the plan, but I don't object to us using that as a resource. That's, my personal opinion. I'm only one person.
I would say best practice from other things I've done for the town is to reference a general website and not link to a document that may change over time, so that they can refer to that in case the Preservation Coalition does change their guidance, then we're not stuck with an old
You
document.
can link it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I can link the website.
Yeah. link is good.
All right, Joe Barnes.
I won't repeat what Reg Foster has said, but I did note also that I thought that the presentation of the proponents coming in with their experts was missing from this document, and it might be good to reference that. So I second what Reg has said.
Okay, Reg gets support for that. Great.
There you go.
Okay,
But you
and
can't read
Gene
my
McKnight.
handwriting.
Gene
Yeah,
McKnight.
on the emphasis on what is allowed under the CPA for the various categories. I noted that each of the categories has a paragraph on that. And I'm wondering if each paragraph that says, like an open space and recreation, the CPA allows and encourages the acquisition, creation, preservation, et cetera. If the paragraph would be bolded or as a way of making it stand out,
Okay.
do you think that?
Of the glossary?
No, right in the text, like an open space and recreation, there's a paragraph about what the CPA allows.
Oh,
you to
you're
spend
back in the
money on.
plan.
I'm back in the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about.
That's all, yeah.
but,
We're going back.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't remember
Yeah,
picking that up.
because there's a chart was asked for, and I
Yeah.
thought, and we thought maybe we didn't need the chart, but since we have paragraphs in each category that don't go to how them, what can you spend money on? Maybe just bolding them.
Okay, we can do that. We can accommodate that. Sure.
One point of information, this isn't approved by town meeting or.
No,
anybody,
it's
no.
not. What our obligation is for the initial plan is to get everyone's input and then do an annual review.
Update.
But we're doing an exhaustive update and we're presenting to folks.
But you just want to be able to say to the FinCom select board, hey, we've updated it, here
Well,
it is.
I want to say that we've updated it. If they have comments, they should provide it to us.
Oh, and give us comments.
Give us
please.
comments.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Got it.
Sure. Okay, that's, I think planning board, I'm gonna really, that's more about, please take a close look at this, because, I'd like to get in front of them.
They're already represented here.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's the select board and the FinCom that haven't really had a chance to comment on the updates we've made here.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually kind of agree with Reg on that because the planning board, doesn't control the money and doesn't make the capital plan. It's really the select board.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a lot, but we should at least go before them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'll do that. Okay, we'll get that done
Yeah,
after the.
but it
public
doesn't
hearing.
need to be a big time,
All right, good.
input
That's a good
type of
point.
thing.
See, I had it wrong. All right. Okay, so on the IGR guidance, what I think we'll do is, why don't we circulate Reg's email with my response? It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a point counterpart, but not really. He raises a couple of good questions. What though, Cecilia had a nice, more kind of gracious response and to take on it too. So that it would be good for us to have a short discussion on that in our next meeting.
Yeah.
Because much of what, Reg raises some good points, some holes here, some things we should address. He made some suggestions about some stuff that I thought should be included in the plan. I didn't really he told me I had the control of the pen, so I basically rejected it. But there's stuff that you bring up about reporting requirements and so that I think is good and that we should deal with that. But I thought we'd deal with that after town meeting.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure, go right ahead. Yep.
Which is, it sounded like you wanted some sort of feedback tonight, and now you're saying something different.
Well, I would like to I'm worried about everybody running out of steam. That's all.
Well, let me try a suggestion, because only you and I and Cecilia know what we're really talking about here, which is, I know I know exactly what you did, and I think that's great to have the counterpoint there. I think that it would be acceptable under, the open meeting law, if everybody would look at that and then get back to Cecilia, but not as reply all with any comments or anything you have. I concur with, Peter's response or whatever like that. And we could perhaps by next Wednesday at 5:30, if everybody's willing to it's a one pager, so it's very quick. You could get back to Cecilia. I think it's extracted and it's fairly self-sufficient. You don't necessarily have to go through the whole IGR to be able to, understand the points in there.
Okay.
I'm looking at you when I'm saying this.
No, that's
You see
right.
if you agree.
And so I think that's fine. I think that, let me take, the takeaway though, is although you want it summarized and some parts of it put into the plan.
No, I'm not arguing for that. I think
Yeah,
the
okay,
plan
good.
is good.
Okay, good.
And I think it'd be put in afterwards, but if you want to say that, just as a speaking point, that we've also looked at and figured that all out. Even if it's not exactly in the plan right now, then, I think that's fine.
Okay, so that makes sense.
It'll be done.
That's good. That's why it'll be done. So now you can
So I
certainly.
think we all want it to be done. I'm speaking for this member. If we've been doing this for 2 years, it would be great to get to this point of it's done.
Oh, yeah.
Really great. It's a huge achievement in my view.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that's for all of us. So let's do that. Let's send the email out, and if they have comments, it's kind of a point counterpoint. And so, but Reg makes some good points, and but whatever he suggests in terms of improvements are things that we can do post approval of this plan. Okay, and remember, it's organic, so it's an organic document, so somebody gets to make changes next year.
Peter,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I raised my hand because I've just got a fundamental question. I've read through the IGR. Is that the acronym, the IGR? Yeah, I've read through it. And I don't know what you and Reg were going back and forth with this on, but after listening to Stuart, what value is this? It's an opinion out of the Department of Revenue. And the bottom line, the person that we really need to rely on is town council. Regardless of what's in, and I don't, I read it, it's fine, it's a nice document, the whole bit, but I don't see why, other than to make sure that we're kind of following along in general, we may or may not agree, town council may or may not agree with the Department of Revenue's IGR. So I guess I don't understand what the emphasis is that we're taking and being placed on this one document.
All right,
And
so
maybe-
I think that you're right. And so I think that really it was, I think you can look at it as the IGR raises some points that point toward best practices and general compliance with the statute. And are we honoring that? That's all. So I think that that's really it. And you're right. And what I view the IGR as is a resource that's over there, it's available, that can be read, that you can use as guidance, but it is by DOR. And I know that Stuart, it is by DOR, and DOR is the only agency charged for responsibility for administration of the CPA. So it is, but it doesn't have the status of a code of a CMR, which goes through an approval process. It is just basically the opinion of a staff council for DOR, but it has some significance. Your takeaway is similar to mine. Okay,
With all due respect to you and Reg and the time you put into it, I'd be more interested in what Chris Heap has to say about it. Because he's the one that's ultimately going to use that as advice. I mean, he's the one that makes the ultimate decision. So if there's anything in there that he needs, I would think that that's where it gets important. But that's just one man's opinion.
that's good. And I think you've got support for Dave. You want to
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing, and I'm wondering how up to speed the town council is on some of these issues. And does the town council need to be educated by this group?
So one thing that Stuart mentioned to me is that, town council is there, he's got a broad portfolio, right? And so Stuart mentioned that on occasion, he's dealt with town council that only has a CPA question once, every blue moon, to use an expression. And so, and he felt like he's played a role in facilitating, bringing that town council up to speed, or at least bringing it, and giving his expertise in that way. So I was kind of prompting Stuart when I asked that question to see if he would actually get out that far out on the limb, but he's going to be deferential to our town council. But I think to your point, Dave, he has addressed several CPC questions over the last 2 cycles. And I think that, but ultimately he is the decider on this. But I think that it's helpful for this committee, we're lay people, but it's helpful for this committee to understand the import that Stuart Saginaw and the Community Preservation Coalition kind of attached to the IGR. It's not binding precedent. Okay, it's informational guidance. So we have 2 hands up. One is Laura and one is Jean. Can we Jean first? Go ahead. Go ahead, Jean.
If it's
Can
being
I just
suggested-
jump in? I'm gonna have to go. I'm getting a call from my husband. I've got to go. I'm so sorry.
All right, good. No, it's
Take good
okay.
care of him.
Take care. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Laura.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Bye.
If it's
Okay.
being suggested that this housing plan, that this community preservation plan be referred to town council for review, I don't really see anything in this plan that raises any legal issues, and I think it would be a waste of town money.
Oh, yeah, I'm not in favor of that.
Suggesting that.
No, I'm not
Okay,
suggesting
I
that.
was not sure.
I'm not suggesting.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Comment? I think what Rick was suggesting is not having seen this document that didn't get into the packet. He's presuming that, and having read the IGR, which is what, 50 pages long.
72.
72 pages long. And, there are 52 legalese pages that might be, town council might opine upon. But in fact, the issues that are in my 1-pager are just mainly best practices and reporting procedures. And, this would be a good idea. Maybe we should be doing that sort of thing. So if my memo and the counterpoint from Peter is referred to town council, you'd probably look at what we were talking about and say, well, that's really up to you, and go on and do something else.
There's no urgency to resolve our counterpoint before we sign off on this document.
No, I would agree with that.
Okay, so let's get that out, and and if you have comments, give them to Cecilia. If you want to bring it up and have further discussion about it, we can do it, but not at our next meeting.
Right.
How's that?
And I don't think it'll be necessary.
And I don't think it'll be necessary. Cecilia, to the degree, if you can cut and paste your, we'll talk offline, but, okay?
I can share my idea in the email.
You will, okay, all right, that's your computing.
Quick question, please.
Yes, sure.
And I think it was mentioned earlier, I'll be brief, but there's no formal mechanism that decrees this is the new plan other than we.
They're gonna approve it. So, and also, let me just say this. So do I have everyone, do I need a motion here to go? I want to circulate this to the finance
Well, can
committee.
I comment?
Sure.
There is
Yeah,
a
we should-
formal requirement in the act, which is when we come up with this draft final plan, we have to have a public hearing on it. So
Oh, yeah.
it's actually on the agenda
Oh,
for the
yeah, well,
15th.
yes.
And I don't think you quite mentioned that before.
Oh, sorry, we're gonna,
And therefore, the reason why we have to drive towards next, having it in cement and we're all agreement, is that we then present it at the public hearing, which is, and so we need to have somebody doing a presentation of it here. It needs to be available in advance, some period of time for public to, have a copy of it if they want it. So it needs to be posted on our
The legal requirement is to have the agenda posted on the town's website and in the newspaper 14 days in advance, and to have it posted as a legal notice at least once a week in the 2 preceding weeks, but there's no legal requirement to have the document available 14 days in advance. It's just best practice for about 48 hours. I checked with town council on
Right,
this.
so we have a notice that's already in the paper.
The notice is in the Boston Globe as of today and Hometown Weekly for tomorrow.
And it
And
has
it's
to
been
say
posted on the website.
plan, and then we have to have a section on the agenda.
We do,
that
we
says-
have all
Yeah,
that.
right.
We have all that. We have that.
So that's why, that's the urgency here.
Yeah, no, we have that. I want to be able to go.
No, not that, notice, but the urgency is being able to present the plan, not so much to the FinCom and to the select board, though that's nice as well. You want to be able to say, we're going to have this at the public hearing, we're going to ask for public comment, and then we're going to put it to bed for the next year.
Yeah, it's premature to approve it tonight. But we'll do that after the hearing.
Yeah,
But
I-
we want to say, yes, it's ready to go for the
Yeah.
hearing.
That's why I wanted to be able to say that we're in a place now where I can say, this is our document. We feel we're
Mhm.
subject to approval in our public hearing, but here's a copy of it, FinCom, we can
Mhm.
take your comments,
Mhm.
okay? And I can do the same thing in the select board anytime. And then we have a public hearing and then we're gonna vote after that.
And if they want to say something about it, they can come to the public hearing.
They can come to the public hearing, okay? All right. Last and final point, which is, do we have, I've got a sense of it, I'm sorry to bring this up, but I want, our last meeting, we voted to, we endorsed the resolution of the warrant article that would double the funding to community housing to raise it to the level of 20%. Recall that?
Yes.
So we kind of, we'll jump the gun a little bit because that's also the subject of our public hearing. So I think that we can reaffirm after that based on our public hearing. But we're gonna we also have because we have the financial warrant that gets heard. And most importantly, the issue that we're doubling the contribution to the community housing reserve fund. So, yes.
Did we not do that at last year's town meeting? Or is that going to be an annual thing?
Yeah, we do it every year at town meeting
Okay.
because it's discretionary by the committee. But what the financial article is also going to be a subject of our public hearing. It's on the notice. And my point is, we jumped the gun. It was Reg's idea to do it, by the way, to authorize the true up for 2022 and 2023. But I think that we can finesse that and we'll reaffirm afterwards based on
We
public.
can
input.
just adjust the minutes in order to correct the.
We can adjust the minutes and make it be that it's just that it's the sense of it. We can make it a sense of the committee that we're in support of it. Okay, so which leads to the next thing. So we can clear our docket.
May I ask a point of information? There are really two issues that are at the public hearing, not issues, but two elements of the presentation. One is the jump the gun vote, that we're going to rewrite in the minutes, that we're going from 10 to 20% of the additional allocations that have to be done. And then there's a separate one, which is that we're going to recommend 11 to 22% in terms of the set asides for that require set asides.
Yes, okay,
I
you
wanna be
interrupted
clear
me. I
about
was gonna
that.
make that's so the next, so therefore this is our opportunity to have a sense of the committee on whether or not you are in favor of that, because that's another reporting requirement that I do with the FinCom. So we double our contribution to 22% annually. I reviewed this matter with the committee. Sense of the committee is the following, okay? So I'm gonna just poll the committee generally, because I think that's okay, is the sense of the, does anyone feel anything other than they are generally in favor of continuing this process, this practice that we've had in the last three fiscal years of doubling our contribution to the community housing reserve fund from 11% to 22%?
No, that's how I feel.
Okay. So we got thumbs up and in favor of. Okay, Zimbone, yes? Generally in favor?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Year by year, is that okay, or do you want to have a discussion now?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Joe Barnes,
Yes.
okay, and then Laura's off. Have I covered everyone who's on? Is Dina still on?
She also had to leave. Her son is having surgery in the morning.
Oh, dear. Okay, so Dave, Rick, okay, all right, so we have, all right, so that helps me. So now we're down to 2 warrant articles, but they're pretty beefy, and so we'll do that at 5:30 on Wednesday, all right? Anything else? All right. Any?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, roll call vote. Jeremy,
Yes.
Foster,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
Zimbone.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys on Zoom.